just thought I'd do a little video on the dreaded shock absorber change. This is my Landrover. I inherited this off my dad, who in turn recovered it from near death. It was scheduled to go to the crushers and get destroyed, and my dad took it on. He did so much work on it, spent hours and hours and hours and weeks and weeks and weeks sorting out the chassis, sorting out everything, putting it back to life. Which he then did, and he's kindly handed it to me, and in turn it will go to my son once I've finished with it. So, as you do, you go on YouTube and you look for stuff that you can't do quite as often. And so today I'm changing excuse me, the shock absorber on this side. So I thought, oh sorry, I'll do both. Now all the videos I've seen, it changes the shock absorber and the springs. Well, the springs, I think actually my dad put the springs on. Well, they seem new anyway because they're blue and they're certainly not fractured or anything, so I don't want to change them. I'm just going to change the shock absorbers. Now, as far as I can see, obviously the spring connects to the bottom plate. It sits there, and then the cone is fastened with these bolts, which I sprayed 2 days ago with oil, so hopefully they're starting to penetrate. And then there's obviously the bolt at the bottom underneath for the shock. It goes up to the cone, and then take that cap off, and there's another nut in there. Now, with my physics, if I undo that bottom bolt down there and undo excuse me, the cone, I'll be able to pull that shock absorber out and nothing will happen to the spring because it's sat on the underside and it's sat on the top side. The shock absorber's not actually doing anything. So in theory, I could change that shock absorber without touching the spring at all, which would be ideal. Obviously, if I can't, then I won't. But so yeah, it's a bit of a hit and miss, this one, because all the videos I've seen, it changes both, and I don't want to change both. I don't need to. Like I say, the new springs, as far as I'm aware. So I'm going to take the bottom bolt off that, take the top bolt, take the cone bolts off, 4 of them, lift it out, and then I'll just cut that shock absorber off because, well, I don't need the shock absorber because it's knackered. So, and then I bought these, the new ones to put on. I'm going to do both sides. So I've got my bag of bits. It's currently -3. I'm freezing cold. However, I've got radio on, or will have once this stops, and I'm going to tinker. So I'm going to do little videos and show you each bit as I go along, just to help people those who don't need to take the springs off, but the shocks have gone. And like I say, there's not many videos on doing that. I can pretty much do most things on Land Rovers, but I've never done just the shocks. So we'll see what happens. See you soon. So an update. It took 3 hours. So basically I jacked up the chassis, sat it on some massive logs, then took the tyre off. Just so I can get to it. You didn't need to take the tyre off, it's just a bit tight really. And then back of here, a long piece socket down onto the 4, took them off. I had to cut the bottom bolt off, the bottom of the shock absorber, because it's absolutely fastened on. That was it, as you can see, looks absolutely knackered. So I got the recip saw and I went through under, basically in between that first spring coil with the recip saw, cut the bottom of the shock absorber off. That allowed me to pull that out the top. Just sat there on the spring quite nicely. Then that bottom bolt, obviously I cut it, dropped out. And then when I got I can't remember what they're called, not cone, I think they're called cones actually. I took the cone off, put the new shock absorber in the cone while it was on the ground, fed it back down and bolted it down. Now the only thing which is a bit of a pain in the backside is when you come to put the 19mm locking nut on the bottom, once it gets to a point where it really bites, it then starts to turn the bottom strut of the shock absorber. So I got a pair of mole grips and basically held it on that whilst I turned it with 19mm. And also there's plenty of thread on it, look. and that did it fine. And then that's it, it's done. So all I'm going to do now, I didn't have to take anything off either, so all I'm going to do now is swing that back round, put the screws in, reconnect the hose, and that's done. And then I'll do the same with the other side. Now I know what I'm doing. Sweet.